I work at a 24-hour emergency pet hospital, and we once admitted a patient that wasn't an animal. Part 1. The man walked in at 2 a.m., dragging something black behind him. The way it moved wasn't normal, and neither was he. The receptionists felt it immediately. His posture was stiff and uneven, like a scarecrow with one leg shorter than the other. He hid greasy blonde hair under a 10-gallon cowboy hat, his thick-soled, studded boots clacking with every step. Later, reviewing the security footage, I noticed his lips were pale and thin, his teeth crooked, the corners of his mouth pulled up in a half-smile, as if he was about to burst out laughing. He was dragging a large, shiny black Rottweiler. The dog resisted, its hind legs sliding across the floor. The camera didn't record audio, but the two receptionists later told me what he'd said. "It's acting like it's possessed." They handed him an intake form. He limped towards the counter. I watched through the security camera lens as another client, holding a cat carrier, edged away from him. I checked his record. The address led to some remote warehouse 3 counties over. The name, Kytton, also sounded fake. No records, no online presence, completely out of place. But the dog's name? That was the only detail I believed was real. You might wonder why I checked that information. It's not standard procedure. I don't usually do that, but the events of the past few nights had compelled me to dig. When he returned the paperwork, he sat down again, dragging the dog like a sack of flour. He leaned against the wall, crossed his arms, eyes staring blankly ahead. He was as motionless as a propped-up corpse. The dog barely stirred, just sat still, seemingly waiting. We see all kinds of people here, aggressive ones, kind ones, but there was something indescribably unsettling about this man. I walked out to the waiting room to take him and the dog into an exam room. It took him a second to notice me, as if he were in a daze. And right then, the stench hit me. Old cigarettes, gasoline, and underneath it all, something far more repulsive. A rancid, greasy, musty odor that clung to the air. The dog sat motionless, hollow and soulless, as if someone had drilled into its brain. As it sat there, drool began to drip from its mouth, forming a puddle on the floor. I introduced myself and started my work. "So, what seems to be the problem with Matt today?" Kytton didn't answer immediately. He looked up at the ceiling as if watching something flickering in the air. "Ah, it's not acting right, hasn't been eating much." Typically, clients would talk for a long time, many for hours if you let them, but he seemed to think that was enough information. He sat there, staring at the ceiling through his greasy, matted hair. As I bent down to take the dog's heart rate, the moment my fingertips touched its skin, a sense of dread crept over me. Like the premonition before a lightning strike, the simmering fear of knowing something terrible is about to happen. Its vital signs were normal heart respiration, but its skin was cold. Its temperature was only 97 degrees Fahrenheit, or about 36 degrees Celsius, lower than we'd like. I checked for dehydration, but as I lifted its lip to examine its gums, I shivered. It felt like I'd gotten too close to something I shouldn't have. The gums were pale. Its pupils were locked onto me, dilated. The unsettling feeling made me nauseous. "Don't turn your back on it," the man said. I froze just as I was about to turn. "What did you say?" "If you're going to move away, just walk backwards. Don't turn your back or something bad might happen." I sighed, annoyed. He'd watched me approach the dog, get close to take its temperature, listen to its heartbeat, and now he decides to warn me about an aggressive dog. I disliked this situation more and more. The man, the dog, the entire circumstance made my stomach churn. I backed away, still facing the dog. It stared at me as if I were a fly, as if I were just a piece of meat. A moment later, Dr. Harkham, our on-call emergency vet, walked in. He was an old-school type, straightforward and tough. He and Kytton exchanged only a few words. The doctor recommended blood tests and overnight IV fluids. The dog also needed to be warmed. Kytton never lost that idiotic half-smirk, as if something was incredibly funny, but he nodded, agreeing to the treatment plan. We moved the dog to the back treatment area. I carefully muzzled it. That's when I noticed it stubbornly refused to walk. Its owner might have been able to drag it earlier, but now it showed no signs of weakness. Looking into its eyes, I saw it was deliberately not moving. It was defiant. I asked Ryan, a strong male staff member, to help carry the dog. As he lifted it, he looked at me. We didn't say anything, but I knew he felt it too, not just from the dog. but the air around us seemed to hum with an unnerving chill. When we drew blood from its jugular, it didn't react. Ryan held the dog, hands clamped tightly on either side of its head, its snout raised. The needle went in, the syringe filled with blood. The blood was warm, but not with the vibrant heat of a living body. I put the sample into the analyzer. The results showed only mild dehydration, slightly elevated pancreatic enzymes, and signs of mild pancreatitis. We placed it in a heated kennel, covered it with blankets, and started IV fluids via catheter. Kytton was gone, but the sense of relief didn't last. Matt was still there, and with it, something invisible. A presence as thick as fog, surrounding us from all sides. That was 3 days ago. That night was unusually quiet, a rarity in the emergency room. We had another dog in recovery, 2 kennels down from Matt the Rottweiler. It was a cattle dog that had just undergone emergency abdominal surgery. It was recovering well, vital signs normal, eating well, responsive. 2 hours later, I walked by the kennels to check. The cattle dog was dead. It had torn open its own incision. The e-collar lay discarded, but it hadn't just licked or lightly bitten. It had thoroughly destroyed its own body. Even as its intestines spilled from its abdomen, it continued to bite and gnaw at them. The dog had attacked its own internal organs as if they were coiled snakes ready to strike. Its corpse lay limp, head slumped to the floor, fresh red blood flowing in streams, winding towards the drain at the back. I heard the sickening gurgle of blood being sucked down the drain. The kennel was soaked in blood, splashed across the walls, even up to the ceiling. Intestines and digestive fluids mixed into a gruesome mess. The cattle dog's eyes were blank, glistening under the lights. I stood frozen for a few seconds, trying to process the horrific sight. It was hard to believe the level of violence it had inflicted upon itself. And just 2 kennels away was Matt. Its eyes followed my movements, its face expressionless. The IV drip still dripped, the heater hummed softly. The only sound left was the trickling blood. Matt wasn't breathing heavily, wasn't whining. Its eyes reflected the neon lights. And in a moment of utter revulsion, I saw that Matt's eyes looked almost human. Dr. Harkham called the cattle dog's owner, but I could clearly hear every word, every choked sob, through the thin office wall. The owner wasn't just crying, he was screaming in agony. I've seen countless deaths in this job, but this was different. Not bad luck, something had intervened. The atmosphere in the hospital visibly changed. In all my years in this profession, I'd never seen a dog disembowel itself like that, as if opening a gym bag and pulling out its own guts. Matt's eyes followed every movement, every blood-soaked towel, every bucket of mop water, every body bag used for the cattle dog's corded and tagged remains. That night remained silent, but it was far from peaceful. I felt like I was standing in a field, dark storm clouds gathering in the distance like warships about to descend. A feeling that something far more terrible was yet to come. A few hours after the cattle dog died, I heard a monitor alarm in the kennel area. It was Matt's IV pump. I didn't want to go back there, but I had to. I asked Ryan to come with me. We muzzled Matt. It didn't resist, didn't flinch. It let us do what we needed. Its eyes still followed every movement, only its eyes moved. 2 dark sockets, as if listening, remembering. The dog had tangled its IV line around its leg. We moved its leg aside, straightened the tube. It was just a minor adjustment, should have taken only a few seconds. But as we turned to leave, the lights above the kennels flickered. At first, it was just a slight tremor, almost unnoticeable. Then the lights blinked on and off, dimming and brightening, until finally they went out completely. The entire area plunged into darkness. Ryan and I stood still. The only light now was a faint glow from the back corridor. We looked at each other, neither of us speaking, neither wanting to acknowledge what we both felt. The air changed, becoming heavy, chilling, as if a storm was brewing. Then, 2 lights directly above Matt's kennel blazed blindingly bright, making us squint. At the same moment, a sharp asterisk crack asterisk sounded. The smell of burning filament filled the air, and those lights too went out. Everything plunged into silence. Ryan's back was to Matt. Matt lunged. A violent explosion, no growl, no bark, just a massive dark shadow charging straight. The still muzzled snout slammed hard into Ryan's side. Repeatedly, Ryan screamed. The dog didn't snarl, only the sound of jaws grinding under the muzzle, drool flying. Ryan spun, struggling to stand, but the unexpected attack left him disoriented. I acted on instinct, yanking open the kennel door. Matt hit Ryan again. this time harder, the force knocking him down. He writhed, trying to grab Matt. The moment Ryan faced it, the dog stopped dead. It froze, relishing the new darkness that enveloped us. There was something profoundly wrong with this dog. Not just a neurological issue, but something deeper. I sensed the intelligence of a predator, but also something more malicious, like a silent, spreading tumor beneath the skin. Ryan and I trembled with extreme fear. Later, he showed me the bruise beneath his ribs, a spreading purple stain, like a withered flower on his skin. Neither of us spoke about it. The rest of the night passed without incident. I focused on other cases: a coughing chihuahua with pneumonia, a Persian cat having seizures, a tabby cat with sensory issues in its front paws. I worked like an automaton, but my mind kept returning to other things. Ryan looked broken, as if something inside him had shattered. It wasn't just shock or trauma or fear, it was a deeper breakage. At the end of my shift, I passed Ryan, but he didn't even wave goodbye. I sat in my car, chain-smoking before heading home, flicking the butts onto the asphalt, watching them scatter. My hands shook the entire drive. At home, I collapsed onto the bed, grabbed the pistol from my purse, and tucked it under my pillow. And as the sun began to rise, my dreams became distorted. I dreamed of a dark face growling in the shadows. It leaned close, panting, its eyes like two deep abysses, endless cosmic whirlwinds. I felt the faint pain of fangs sinking into my skin. Not a brutal bite, but a slow, deliberate gnawing, deepening little by little into my flesh. When I woke, I was drenched in sweat, the sheets soaking wet. The next night for my shift, the moment I walked into Matt's kennel area, I felt profound disappointment. It was still there. The heater still hummed, Matt's eyes still followed me. The lights directly above its kennel were still on, but the surrounding ones now began to flicker. Ryan called in sick, saying he'd been vomiting continuously since last night. I had a feeling there was more to it, but I didn't have time to probe. I texted him to get well soon. He read it but didn't reply. And that terrifying man who called himself Kytton, he didn't answer his phone when we called about Matt's treatment. The number was suddenly out of service. He wouldn't be coming back. He'd paid half the bill with crumpled $100 bills. We didn't expect to collect the other half. That night was busy. I told the manager not to put any other dogs in that row of kennels, but we had no choice. The small kennels for cats and small animals were at the other end of the building. The space for large dogs had asterisk to be in this area. We admitted a Great Dane with liver disease. There was no other spot than the furthest kennel, a few cells from Matt, the very kennel where the cattle dog had been. 10 minutes later, I returned to check. Matt's kennel door was wide open, the latch sprung, the door swaying. Before that, its IV had stopped. Someone must have disconnected it. The IV pump was no longer beeping, and there was no sign anyone had opened the door. This area was usually deserted at night. Matt sat right at the threshold, drooling, its eyes vacant. I slammed the door shut, relatched it, and left the room. I came back with 2 portions of food. Instantly, I shuddered. The kennel door was wide open again. I hadn't heard any sound, hadn't seen the door move. To open this type of kennel door, you needed hands to manipulate the latch. I was certain no one had entered or exited while I was getting the food. I slammed the door shut again, this time adding a carabiner to temporarily lock it. I slid 1 plate of food into the Great Dane's kennel, another for Matt. I gave the Dane its liver-specific diet. For Matt, I offered a wet, recovery diet. As I turned to leave, a sound suddenly echoed. A sound that chilled me to the bone. Not a growl, not a whine, but like someone trying to speak with a mouth full of water, a male voice gurgling from deep in the throat before spitting it out. The sound of a dog trying to speak. I turned back. Matt still sat there, now silent. The atmosphere was strange, like an invisible conductor directing a silent orchestra. Because right beside me, the Great Dane began to whine. It was the Dane making those bizarre, hellish sounds. Its food plate was spilled on the kennel floor, its fur bristled, and it was pressed against the back wall. I saw its eyes darting up at the ceiling, clearly sensing something, a primal, inexplicable feeling. I knew it felt it because I felt the exact same way. I moved to open its kennel door, but the whining stopped. The dark form trembled, then the whine changed pitch. It deepened into an eerie, whistling moan, then soared high, then dropped low like a tornado siren. Suddenly, it went silent. The dog abruptly calmed, stood in a normal posture, then, as if possessed, it turned and began to attack its own leg. Not just gnawing or biting, but tearing and crushing. Its jaws clamped so deep that I clearly heard bones cracking in the empty hallway, blood spraying across the kennel floor. It showed no sign of pain, no panic, but rather as if something compelled it to destroy itself. I couldn't enter the kennel because if I rushed in, it would likely turn and bite me. It could seriously injure me. I turned and ran, shouting for help as I went. My frantic cries echoed through the hallway. Dr. Harkham, along with 2 other vet techs, Angie and Denise, abandoned an exam and rushed out. They saw my terrified expression. I grabbed a catch pole and darted ahead. The Great Dane was still gnawing, but it wasn't a frenzied attack. It seemed to be performing a deliberate, distorted act. Its leg was torn open, exposing tendons and bone. Blood pulsed with its heartbeat. I pried open the kennel door, slipped the catch pole's loop around its neck, and tightened it. I pulled hard on the pole to hold its head still, preventing it from biting further. It snapped wildly at the air, showing no pain or fear. Then it bit the pole, not out of panic, not out of anger, but as if a corrupted instinct. A horrifying sound, teeth shattering against the breaking metal, shards flying. The leg was almost completely shredded, bloody and dangling, held by only a few strips of skin. I saw a broken canine tooth fall to the floor. The pole was smeared with blood, dented, but still held against the biting force. The dog weakened, collapsing in its own pool of blood. By the time Dr. Harkham administered a sedative, it was too late. Too much blood loss. The Dane convulsed, still snapping at the air like a dying toy machine, its eyes cloudy, then still. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Matt, its lips pulled back in a grimace identical to Kytton's. "When are we going to get rid of that damn dog?" I said sharply, pointing at it. Dr. Harkham shot me a sharp look. His white lab coat was splattered with blood, his eyes dark and sunken from exhaustion that predated Matt's arrival. "What I see," he said, his voice hoarse, "is a dog that just self-destructed and died right here in our facility. This is the second one in 2 days. Don't worry about that freakish dog." He waved his hand dismissively at Matt. "We have bigger problems. I have to call yet another dog owner, tell them their pet died horribly right here. God, the troubles are piling up." He wiped his blood-stained fingers across his face, his sleeve. He looked utterly drained. He didn't see what I saw. He didn't see how Matt was watching. How its eyes slid across the spreading pool of blood on the floor as if with relish. Dr. Harkham sighed, rubbing his face. "We tried calling that creepy guy again. The number's disconnected. He dumped the dog here. That means we have to find it a home. That process could take weeks, but I can't stand it for weeks. No one can." And when I looked at Angie, I knew she was thinking the same thing. Hours later, the air was thick with unease. The night shift dragged on, but everyone's spirits had changed. Exhausted, hollow after what we'd witnessed. The cattle, dog, the Great Dane, all that blood, 2 kennels smeared in it that we had to scrub clean. Matt was still there, its food untouched, the heater humming softly behind it. As I cleaned, 2 more lights flickered and died. I wiped every smear of blood from the floor, the metallic stench clinging to my skin, the piles of towels soaked in thick, dark red. All that time, Matt never took its eyes off us. It was like a shadow, sitting in the dark corner of the hallway. I told myself I'd find a way to deal with it, that I needed time, but time was not on my side. I had just tossed a pile of bloody towels into the laundry bin when I heard it. "Allison!" I dropped everything. A thick, wet, drawn-out voice, as if from a ruptured throat, not a bark, not a growl, it was trying to say my name. "Allison." I spun around, stomach clenched. Matt sat motionless in its kennel, drool dripping onto the blanket beneath. Its dark pupils devoured the last vestiges of light. I stood numb, my brain trying to deny what I'd just heard. Maybe I'd misheard. Maybe it was a pipe or a monitor. Then the putrid smell hit me like an electric shock. Not the usual hospital smell, not the familiar scent of disinfectant or everyday animals. This was the smell of long-rotted flesh, the stench of something dead and trapped somewhere, pungent and disgusting, overpowering all other odors. I suddenly understood the musty smell I'd noticed when Kytton walked in. That oily, foul smell, it wasn't from him, but from Matt, right from the start. I felt a churning fear urging me to run, and I did. I snatched the fallen blanket, threw it into the laundry bin, and bolted. My hands and feet shook uncontrollably, my heart pounded like a drum. Don't turn your back on it. Kytton's warning chilled me to the bone. It's like it's possessed. I knew what Matt had tried to do to Ryan. I knew what it wanted to do to me. Now I knew I couldn't let it strike first. I would kill it. For the rest of the shift, I kept my head down, waiting for an opportunity. My mind wasn't on the cases I was handling. Everything happened on autopilot. My body performed, but my mind had decided on something else. When there was a lull, I secretly prepared 20 ml of a mixture of pentobarbital sodium and phenytoin sodium. The drug was called ehisol. This thick pink solution is used for humane euthanasia in animals. I drew enough to kill a dog twice Matt's size. There would be a discrepancy in the controlled substance log, but I'd gradually conceal it over a few weeks. Each time I logged it, I'd add or subtract a little, stretching out the time, hoping no one would notice. I locked the cabinet, slipped the syringe into my pocket. I knew I was violating federal law. I could lose my license, my job, even go to jail. But in my bones, I knew one thing for certain. Whatever was in that kennel had to die. The next morning, on my day off, the hospital atmosphere was incredibly grim. Everyone was crying. Ryan had passed away. He'd committed suicide in his mobile home after leaving his shift. No details, no note. He was here yesterday, gone today. The police stopped by to deliver the news and left. They didn't stay long, didn't ask many questions. I knew why. The news of Ryan's death only strengthened my resolve. I couldn't wait for another dog to be housed with Matt or another colleague to be pushed to the brink. I pushed all the pain and horror into a corner. I'd deal with it later. I just waited for the right moment, a gap between shifts when staff were thinnest. I approached Matt's kennel. It tilted its head, eyes tracking me, looking as if it had been waiting. I opened the door, slipped on the muzzle quickly. My hands were stiff, tightening the straps more than necessary, a flicker of hatred in my gaze. My heart beat with strange calmness. I grabbed its leg, found the vein. My other hand held the syringe ready, piercing the needle beneath the skin. The syringe felt hot in my hand. I pressed the plunger, injecting all the thick pink solution into its bloodstream. This dose was enough to kill a dog twice its size, but I injected every last drop. Normally, the drug would cause the animal to pass instantly, its body slumping, muscles relaxing, life escaping like a breath. Their eyes would be open, vacant, but Matt didn't move. Its chest still rose and fell steadily, its muscles remained rigid, its dark pupils fixed on me. Such a dose should have taken it down immediately. The dog should have been dead. The hallway lights flickered, one by one popping and dying, plunging the entire row of kennels into terrifying darkness. The air grew heavy as if the sky itself was pressing down. The heater hummed, then abruptly stopped. Only the faint, blurry green light of the exit sign at the end of the hallway remained. The darkness seemed to swirl, suffocating everything. I could barely breathe. The kennel door slammed shut behind me. I gasped, a terrified inhale. Absolute silence enveloped me. Only Matt's slow, heavy breathing echoed. I felt its presence distinctly in the dark, a sluggish, burning weight. "Allison," the voice erupted in front of me, deep within the dense black cage at the end of the kennel. A sound like a larynx sliced and buried under scar tissue, a distorted mouth struggling to form words. Vowels drawn out, oozing an inhuman sliminess. My gut clenched. I fumbled for the door latch with trembling fingers, but my hands were slick with sweat. My heartbeat screamed in my ears. The oppressive darkness, only the smell of putrid flesh pervaded. Then I felt it, a cold, dead hand clamped around my ankle. I stifled a scream, my entire body jolted as something tightened its grip. Sharp nails pressed through my pants, a static current crackling around my skin. I spun, tearing free, the kennel door bursting open as I hit it with my shoulder. I sprinted down the hallway, my feet pounding on the floor. Behind me, I heard the door crash, then the sound of paws or dog feet striking the floor, fast and heavy. It was chasing me. I ran headlong into the darkness, hands scrambling along the wall, searching for an exit. Reaching the end of the hallway, my fingers swept across a smooth surface. I couldn't find a doorknob or latch at all, just slid across an endless expanse. The pounding footsteps closed in, sounding not like one creature, but like 7 running together. No growling, no barking, no warning, just a silent force, like a train thundering down the tracks. I quickly turned, leaning my back against the door as if hoping to vanish. The darkness was so thick I could barely see. The exit sign cast a faint green light from above. I saw the silhouette of a creature, hunched like a lurking beast. Its breathing was wet, slow, reeking of malice. Then a subtle movement, so close I felt the change in air pressure right against my face. I braced myself to run back the way I came. The hallway ahead was the only way out. Instinct drove me to run mindlessly. I reached my locker, yanked the door open, my hands fumbling inside for my bag. The air seemed to contort around a massive black shadow that filled the space behind me. My fingers touched the cold metal of the gun's grip. I spun, aiming the barrel at the open shadow before me in the dim light. I squeezed the trigger. The first shot flashed, illuminating the hallway like lightning. In that brief flash, I saw his face, a horrifying, twisted grin. The second, then the third. His body jerked with each shot but didn't fall. My eardrums rang from the gunfire. In the flickering blue-green of the emergency lights, I saw his lips still pulled into that chilling grin. The sixth and final shot hit a vital spot. The left side of his skull seemed to cave in, his snout blown apart, the bullet piercing through. In the dim light, I saw his jaw detach, his tongue hanging out, yet his whole body still convulsed. A spine-chilling crack echoed. He staggered, then finally crashed to the ground. I stood there, gun trembling in my hand, my ears ringing. The darkness still seemed to swirl around me, pressing down. Then came footsteps, frantic shouts. Someone grabbed my arm, pulling me back. The lights flickered, then brightened. For the first time, I clearly saw what I had done. One bullet was embedded in the tile floor, the other 5 had struck him directly. Matt lay on its side, its head a bloody mess of bone, its chest still rising and falling once, twice, then it went still. When had the muzzle disappeared? It must have torn it off while chasing me. I stood frozen, gun still gripped tightly, the ringing in my ears refusing to subside. Everything around me was chaos, but it all seemed meaningless. They took me to the back room, my hands and feet still shaking, my ears still ringing. I knew what to say, how to act to get out of this. Self-defense. I have an uncle named Philip who's a defense lawyer. He used to talk about his work when we went fishing, so I knew a little. I played the part well. The police eventually let me go home. We wrapped Matt, bagged it, and put it in the freezer to await cremation. Then I requested time off. A few quiet days passed. I tried to push away those horrifying memories. Tried not to think about how it had called my name in that choked voice. Tried to ignore the all-encompassing fear that night, but it was no use. The morning I was due back at work, my phone rang a blocked number. Part of me knew this call would come, however illogical it seemed, so I answered. A wheezing breath echoed through the receiver, then he chuckled. A dry, raspy laugh like chewing tobacco. "You shouldn't have killed it, little girl." Kytton's voice slithered into my ear, cold as a snake coiling around my spine. He laughed louder, growing with each moment, as if my ordeal was a mere joke. His slow, drawn-out cadence was mixed with something I couldn't name, perhaps the sound of someone with tobacco in their mouth. "You just made things worse, little girl." His laughter twisted into a maniacal shriek. Then the call ended. I stood there, phone pressed to my ear, eyes staring blankly at the ceiling. His words hung heavy in the air. "You just made things worse." My first reaction was confusion. How did he get my number? Then panic washed over me. His words were like a dark premonition, piercing deep into my bones. He said I'd made things worse, and somehow, deep down, I believed him. Part 2. It all started with a dog, or rather, with something masquerading as a dog. I thought I'd done the right thing by euthanizing it, but now something infinitely worse was hunting me. First, I had to clean up a few things. The worst was the ehisol I'd used to end Matt. On my first day back, I staged an accident. I dropped and shattered a bottle of the drug, letting it spray everywhere. This complicated the drug log, but it also masked the deficit. I'm not proud of it. You shouldn't be either. But at the time, I saw no other option. I was wrong. On my first day back at work, after my time off, I realized Matt was still in the freezer. Its frozen front leg had ripped through the thick plastic bag, leaving scratches on the sharp ice coating the inside of the freezer, like tiny spears. I didn't tell anyone that its carcass had moved. That nauseous feeling resurfaced as I had to rebag its body in 3 more layers. If you're not familiar with the bags we use in veterinary medicine when a pet passes, they're made of high-density polyethylene or PVC. They're very durable, thick, as if even sin couldn't penetrate them. For an animal's leg to puncture through the bag is very rare, but Matt was never normal. I thought of it as its final curse. And you'll die with me too, Matt. Since Kytton hadn't paid the vet bill, I volunteered to pay for the cremation. I wanted its ashes in an urn. Somehow, I felt it was important, more important than even myself, though I couldn't explain why. When they took Matt's carcass away, along with 2 other dogs that I believed it had caused to die, I felt no relief. Kytton's voice kept echoing in my head, "You just made things worse." That drawn-out, sarcastic southern drawl. A sick bastard. Initially, the clinic seemed to settle down, at least for a few days. I started to relax. Angie, my colleague and friend, approached me. "Did you hear how Ryan died?" I shook my head, more taciturn than usual, trying to convey I didn't want to hear. A part of me felt responsible for his death. As irrational as it sounded, the human mind is a devious thing. Grief doesn't need logic, it just needs to gnaw, to possess, to destroy. Angie continued. "He used a box cutter to stab himself. My cousin works in traffic police, she got the details. It was horrific, Allison. He stabbed himself multiple times." "No," I couldn't bear it. Tears welled in my eyes. She reached out to comfort me, but I brushed her hand away and ran to the restroom. I stood there for almost 10 minutes, pressing against the sink, trying to regulate my breathing. For the rest of the shift, everything was calm, dull, and subdued since I had shot Matt in the hallway. Angie had to work 2 shifts back-to-back that day. It had become common these past few years because the hospital was always short-staffed. They asked if I could work another shift, but I refused. After what I had witnessed and done, I wasn't lucid enough to push through. That night, I went home. I crawled into bed, my gun hidden under my pillow. My mobile home was silent, only the occasional whistling wind making the walls tremble slightly. But I found a strange comfort in that sound. As I lay down, closing my eyes, I saw it. A black Rottweiler, fur bristling, grimacing, eyes like deep pits. It moved towards me in the living room. Its presence was like a heavy weight pressing down on the darkness. Then I looked down. Instead of 4 dog paws, it had 4 pale hands, flesh grafted onto the black fur along its limbs. It advanced. I was rigid, unable to move, as if my muscles were frozen, watching it crawl to the foot of the bed. I tried to open my eyes, tried to wake from the nightmare. But my eyes asterisk were open, and I wasn't asleep. A hand emerged, grabbing the edge of the bed, then another. I clearly felt the weight pressing down on the mattress, the bed sagging from an invisible force. Everything was too real to bear. Then its snout emerged slowly, like a shark's fin breaking the surface. It drained all goodness, all righteousness remaining in the room. Only a simmering loneliness, a darkness eating away at my mind. I felt like I was sinking into a bottomless pit, falling endlessly, the smell of putrid flesh assaulting my nostrils. Its gaping maw was inches from my lips, its eyes staring intently, unblinking, like burning coals. Drool dribbled onto my neck, its mouth slowly yawning wide. Each jagged tooth glistened in the moonlight, rows of rough, interlocking teeth. The crack of bones and joints shattered the silence as its jaw was pried open beyond its limits, ligaments sliding and popping, opening wider and wider, far beyond what any human or animal could achieve. A hot, damp breath exhaled onto my face. My teeth clenched, its jaw slowly advancing, savoring every second. Every nerve in my body screamed, telling me to run, to fight, but my body was frozen under that terrible weight. The giant mouth hung suspended directly above my face. Sharp teeth intertwined, waiting. I clearly saw the adhesive tendons stretching as its jaws prepared to close. Hot, humid breath transferred to my skin. A low, guttural growl rose from its throat, shaking the mattress, piercing straight through me. Blood pulsed at my temples, drowning out all sounds except for the grinding bones. Then my phone rang. The sudden ring shattered the moment. The screen's light stabbed through the room, and the heavy weight vanished instantly. The monster's shadow dissipated into the darkness as if it had never been there. I shot up, gasping for air, my heart pounding like a warhorse's hooves, hands and feet trembling. I frantically looked around the darkness to make sure it was gone. Had I just had sleep paralysis, or was something worse happening? I heard the mobile home's door slam shut. I grabbed my phone and turned on the bedside lamp. On the phone, a deafening alarm blared, along with the sound of wind. Tears made it impossible to read the caller ID. "Oh, damn it, Allison, turn on the news." The voice on the other end was Dr. Harkham. He sounded tired. I grabbed the remote, turned on the TV, and switched to the local news channel. On the other end, the doctor was still gasping for breath. "We are currently on the scene. This fire is suspected to be arson, and firefighters are struggling to contain it, though they have thankfully prevented it from spreading to adjacent buildings." My entire body went numb. The screen showed firefighters in yellow gear amid the ashes of where I used to work. Half the roof had collapsed, flames engulfing the entire building. I could still make out a few familiar details, just charred fragments. I stood there, phone still pressed to my ear, numb, watching the firefighters sift through the remnants of a part of my life. "Everything's gone, just like Ryan. Angie, she didn't make it." Dr. Harkham's voice choked. He wasn't the type to cry, yet I distinctly heard his sobs through the phone. This was a man over 60, a native New Mexican, tougher than anyone, yet he was sobbing. I clenched my jaw, swallowing my tears. Angie was my friend, even closer than Ryan. She had burned to death in that building. "What happened? Tell me everything," I said, trying to suppress my emotions. "I think it was that twisted guy, that blonde bastard Kytton. He stalked us while we were working, then threw a can of gasoline with a burning rag through the office window, the doctor's office. It ignited almost instantly. Several patients in there died too." His voice was hoarse, trying to stay calm. "I don't know why anyone would do that. For what? We made that bastard's mobile number useless. My God, I've told the police everything. This is beyond them, beyond the police. If I told them everything, they'd think I was crazy. Even after I'd blown Matt's jaw apart, I'd still hidden many details. Kytton didn't need a reason. He was like an ancient force existing only to sow suffering, to harvest flesh and blood. He didn't need a reason for Dr. Harkham to bring that monster, then burn down the clinic. He just wanted us to suffer, wanted to see us die. Dr. Harkham was silent, my words hitting him like a punch. "I have to go," he finally said. "The police want more statements. Be careful, Allison." The call ended. Another victim. Angie was gone. Another life swallowed by a horrific tragedy I still didn't understand. My hands shook, not just from fear of what I'd just experienced, but from the pain of loss. From thinking about Ryan's horrifying death, a catastrophe that had just stepped into my life. And now I knew it intended to stay. I no longer cared to sleep, didn't even bother to try. My phone vibrated with messages from friends and family, including a missed call from Joe, an old friend. We used to call him Navajo Joe. He always smiled, a handsome, tough guy. I should have called everyone back immediately, but I had more pressing matters. I gathered my belongings, unlocked my revolver, and loaded each chamber. The compact 9 felt solid in my hand, its matte finish worn after years of use. The gun frame was small, but the metal was heavy, providing a sense of security. I tossed a few more boxes of ammunition into my bag. The copper-jacketed bullets glinted in the dim bedside lamp. From atop my dresser, I took down an old wooden cigar box. Inside was a few $1,000s in cash I'd saved for emergencies. If not now, when? I stepped out onto the mobile home's porch, lit a cigarette, and watched the sun slowly crawl above the horizon. Smoke curled with the wind, dissipating into the air. By the time the sun was full, the entire pack of cigarettes was gone. I looked at my watch, thinking the crematorium must be opening soon. They had taken Matt's body a few days ago. I had to convince them to cremate Matt first, not to wait in line. My late father's old pickup truck rumbled softly, the engine slowly coming to life. He used to consider it his pride and joy. I leaned forward to adjust the rearview mirror, then froze. A black leather collar studded with spikes was hanging there, dangling. The tags clinked softly when my hand brushed it. Matt's, and beneath it, Kytton's phone number. I recognized it immediately. The number we'd tried to call at the clinic wasn't for a dog or a cat, it was for that thing asterisk. Where my fingers touched the collar, an icy chill, like dry ice, wrapped around my skin. I lowered the window and tossed the collar into the bushes. It didn't make me feel any better. He had gotten it back. I had placed the collar in the cremation bag with Matt, yet now it was here. That meant he had broken into my truck, into my home. Whatever appeared in my mobile home last night might not have been Matt, it might have been Kytton himself. This was just the beginning, and everything was spiraling into a nightmare. I couldn't control it, at least not alone. I drove away from my small plot of land. The wheels kicked up red dust behind me, the air conditioner hummed. My fingers drummed nervously on the steering wheel. 30 minutes later, I pulled up to the pet crematorium, a gray building shrouded in dusty sunlight. I got out and tried to pull the locked door. I pressed the doorbell, heard a faint ring inside, but then it went silent. I checked my phone's calendar, cursing under my breath. I'd been so lost in thought that I'd forgotten it was a federal holiday. They were closed. No one inside. Vet clinics usually contract with crematoriums, sending deceased pets in black body bags. We store them in freezers until the crematorium truck picks them up, then they're transferred to a larger cold storage unit at the crematorium, waiting their turn for processing. Sometimes it takes weeks for cremation to be completed. Matt had only been sent a few days ago. Yet I could feel its presence inside the building, like standing next to a live, exposed wire. The back road I'd taken was deserted. In the distance, I saw faint traffic on the highway, but too far for them to see what I was about to do. I walked around looking for an alarm system. None. Peering through the windows, I saw no cameras either. Not many thieves wanted to break into a crematorium. It was full of frozen animal carcasses. I went to the back window. Above, the sky was clear blue, not a cloud in sight, wind gently rustling through dry grass. I bent down, picked up a palm-sized rock at the base of a cactus, testing its weight. Then I threw it straight through the pane. Glass shattered, sharp fragments still clinging to the frame like teeth. I found a nearby wooden branch, swept away the larger pieces, and hoisted myself inside. Glass crunched under my boots as I landed. The rock I'd thrown rolled some distance away. The storage room was as vast as an abandoned warehouse. To my left were 4 massive crematorium ovens, their metal doors dull and tarnished. To my right, along the wall, was a silent row of freezers. Steel beams crisscrossed the ceiling, casting long shadows like a giant skeleton. I had the sensation of stepping into a place I shouldn't be, like I was trespassing on something that was waiting for me. The air was thick with silence, my heartbeat pounding in my chest, steady but rapid, like distant war drums. The wind whistled through the broken window, then a smell assaulted me. Pungent, foul, exactly like a carcass left too long in the sun, skin cracked, flies swarming and laying eggs. The air itself seemed to bubble with faint, disgusting sounds from hidden maggots. A asterisk thump made me spin towards the freezers. The lid of one freezer lifted, then dropped, a hollow clack asterisk. I held my breath, staring as the white freezer lid twitched, then slammed shut like a mouth opening and closing. Then another freezer began to asterisk thump thump asterisk. Then the next. Soon, the entire row of freezers rattled like a demented orchestra. They vibrated, groaned against the floor, sliding out of their original positions. Suddenly, they all stopped, silence pervaded. Then crash. The first freezer that had thumped was thrown 10 feet away, overturned, metal scraping across the concrete floor, body bags ripped open, spilling their contents everywhere. The freezer slammed into a crematorium oven, the force so great that its door sprang open, the lid spinning wildly before clattering against the wall. And amidst the wreckage, I saw the carcass wrapped in 3 thick bags that I knew all too well. Matt. Its body was cold, stiff, frozen beneath the plastic. Its legs were stiff, convulsing. I clearly heard the cracking bones, the clicking joints, like something trying to move when it shouldn't. The rigid legs pushed against the plastic like a baby in a womb. I felt eyes on me, as if a pair of burning pupils were behind me. Darkness flickered in the periphery of my vision, but I couldn't tear my gaze away from the scene before me. The dog I had shot dead, the one with the caved-in skull, the one I'd injected with enough dose to kill 2 dogs like it. The one that had been locked in the freezer for days. I saw a square-headed shovel leaning against the crematorium oven, covered in ash. I grabbed it, the rough wooden handle digging deep into my skin, and charged. I swung down with all my might, the first strike ripping through the plastic bags. Frozen chunks of flesh flew, and Matt's head rolled out. Its frozen eyes, icy cold under the dim light, its shattered lower jaw thumping on the floor. It twitched and convulsed wildly. It was too frozen to bite, just writhing madly. My heart pounded so hard it deafened me. The wind howled through the broken window, its high-pitched tone sounding like a human scream. The darkness behind me grew thicker. I swung the shovel again, its blade slicing through tendons, severing the neck bone. The 4 legs in the bag twitched, thrashing in the air. I didn't stop, continued chopping furiously until the head was completely detached, accompanied by a gruesome crunch. The wind howled more fiercely, but I knew it wasn't just the wind behind me now. I turned, Kytton. He appeared in the broken window frame, tall and gangly, his body twisted to squeeze through the jagged glass. One hand clutched the sill, fingers digging deep into the concrete, the other hand hidden in the shadows. His greasy blonde hair obscured his half-human, half-demonic face. His neck stretched, vertebrae clearly visible under the jaundiced skin. It wasn't just long. It coiled, folded like a flattened tube, moving smoothly but utterly wrong. Seeing it from that angle made my gut twist. His eyes were bloodshot, veined. The whites were gone, only 2 pools of blood, and his pupils were dull black like rusty coins discarded in thick mud. He inhaled slowly and deeply, as if tasting the air, then his cracked lips widened into a grotesque smile, tearing across his face from cheek to cheek, as if his skin wasn't big enough to contain it. His chest rose and fell as if with suppressed laughter. And his head, oh God, his head was leaning closer than it should. That impossibly long neck stretched into the storage room, his distorted shadow cast long on the wall, bridging the distance between us. Behind me, Matt's carcass still thrashed and thumped on the floor like a beheaded fish. The eerie sound echoed throughout the space, each twitch growing more desperate, more wrong. I backed away from Kytton, stepping slowly, my heart pounding like drums in my ears. He didn't speak, just breathed slowly, as if savoring, as if drinking my fear. The cold wind through the window stirred between us. Then his other arm stretched out, its elbow joint bent unnaturally, bones clicking. His hand clutched something, raising it like a trophy. At first, I didn't understand its shape, a dark, limp mass. Then I saw his middle and ring fingers plunged deep into two empty eye sockets, his thumb piercing the top of its head as if he were holding a bowling ball. I froze, a sound like a late-night car alarm blaring in my head. A human head, for God's sake. The jaw hung slack, swinging with his every movement. Blood and torn skin mixed, glistening. I knew that face. Dr. Harkham. My breath caught, I stumbled back. Instantly, a searing pain shot through my calf, as if caught in a steel trap. It took my brain a moment to catch up. I looked down. Matt's head was clamped onto my leg, its shattered jaw still biting like a vice. Shreds of skin tenuously held the structure together, but the teeth were locked deep. The pain burned, hot, an iron grip squeezing until blood pulsed. Then Kytton burst into laughter, his laugh distorting the air, shrill and guttural, a mix of human and something beyond human. His whole body shook with the laughter, his long neck undulating, his spine twisting as if stretched taut. I swung the shovel down onto Matt's head, the impact reverberated through my arm. It clamped down harder, more warm blood seeping around my ankle. I gritted my teeth, trying to pry the head off my leg like a clam from its shell. A piece of flesh tore away as I flung the head, which dropped with a wet thud to the floor. I screamed in pain, blood filling my boot. I went mad, jamming the shovel blade between its now closed jaws, using my full weight to bear down. Teeth shattered, the jaw splintered with a asterisk crunch asterisk. Kytton howled with laughter, looking ecstatic, his shoulders shaking, his neck writhing like a snake. I flung the shovel horizontally, aiming straight for his face, but before the blade could reach, his neck retracted quickly into the darkness outside. The metal clanged against the wall. He still clung to the window frame, lurking. "You shouldn't have killed it, Allison. You started something you can't finish, little girl. If only you'd let it finish eating, and I would have come back to pick it up." His voice hissed like a snake, slithering across the distance. His head shriveled, smoothly sliding back as his impossibly long neck retreated into the night. His fingers left the windowsill, his claws scoring the concrete, leaving deep gashes. Behind me, the thrashing carcass suddenly went silent. The air grew heavy, suffocating. I didn't dare turn, at least not yet. I waited for the inevitable. That Kytton would slip through another crack, stab his sharp claw into my back, or gnaw at me with his jaundiced teeth like a wild animal. But nothing happened. I let out a ragged breath, my body on the verge of collapsing. His lingering presence kept my muscles tense, braced for an attack that never came. Finally, I fought through the fear and forced myself to turn. Matt's carcass lay still. Whatever had been animating it, turning it into a machine beyond death, was now gone. Completely gone, I hoped. I dragged myself to the nearest crematorium oven, my leg aching, my hands trembling as I pried open the lid. The heavy metal door creaked open. I pulled out the sliding tray. First, I picked up Matt's head, still with a piece of lower jaw attached, then its body, heavier than I expected. I struggled to lift it. With every movement, the wound on my calf burned, but I clenched my teeth, pushing the carcass fully inside. I fumbled on the control panel, pressing buttons, desperately hoping I chose the right one. The fire roared, the oven glowing orange and yellow. Heat blasted my face as the flames engulfed the carcass. I staggered back, my legs wobbly, dragging myself to a corner of the break room. I frantically rummaged through drawers, my hands shaking so much it was hard to search. Finally, I found a pile of cotton gauze and a roll of bandage. I returned to the oven. I slumped to the floor, untying my shoe, groaning as blood dripped. The sock under my pants was soaked with blood, clinging to my skin. I took a deep breath, grabbed the scissors, and cut my pant leg just above the wound, gently peeling it away. The wound was worse than I thought, blood pooling. The torn flesh was black and bruised around the edges, spreading like ripples from a center. My whole calf throbbed with my heartbeat. The open wound probably needed stitches, but I didn't have time. Thanks to my genes, it probably wasn't too deep. Still, The torn, blood-soaked fabric clung to my skin. I pressed the gauze onto the wound, holding my breath as the blood soaked through the cotton. I wrapped the bandage tightly, just enough to stop the bleeding without cutting off circulation. Antibiotics or lidocaine would be great right now, and I could stitch it myself if I had to. But what crematorium has medical supplies? I leaned my head against the wall, teeth clenched, my ears ringing from the heat, from exhaustion, from pain. Suddenly, I heard a distant, distorted scream, twisting in the air like the shriek of wood splitting in fire. I glanced at the observation window of the oven. Inside, Matt's carcass writhed, consumed by the flames. Its curled fur singed, then burst into fire, skin peeling layer by layer. Its limbs convulsed, a grotesque remnant of life fighting desperately. The smell of burning fur and flesh made my stomach churn, but I forced myself to watch. To witness the thing that had haunted me transform into a gradually burning skeleton. Finally, only a film of black smoke clung to the glass. The low hum of the incinerator filled the space. I let the heat wash over me, then, after a while, stumbled to my feet, limping to the control panel to turn off the oven. By the time the oven was cool enough to retrieve the ashes, the sun was setting. The sky was a fiery orange. Kytton hadn't returned, for now. I grabbed the shovel and a trash bag. The oven door groaned open. I scooped out the charred bone fragments, sifting away the crisp black bits. The remaining spongy residue was pale gray. Piece by piece, I fed them into the bone grinder. The machine whirred, pulverizing Matt's last remains into ash, just a handful fitting into a small bag. I stood there for a long time, clenching the blood-stained bag. Kytton had vanished into the night, but I knew it wasn't over. I thought of Ryan, of Angie, of the 2 dogs, of the clinic now just ashes. I had lost too much. In just a few short weeks, too much. Almost half my life had been erased. I was so hollow I couldn't shed a single tear. Everything had shattered in an instant without explanation. He could have killed me easily. He was just playing a game of cat and mouse, batting around a broken-winged quail, each strike harder than the last, and sooner or later he would bite. I gritted my teeth against the pain, trying to push the freezer back into place. My leg screamed with every step. I plugged it back in, restocked the body bags, propped the broken lid as a temporary barrier. The air was tainted with the metallic smell of blood, the scent of frozen things mingling with the desert dust outside. I found a broom and a mop to clean up my blood and the fluid that had leaked from Matt's body. It wouldn't be perfectly clean, but at least it wouldn't be as grotesque. Outside, I looked around and saw only sand, dust, and vast stretches of weeds. The silence wasn't comforting. It was heavy, as if the entire desert held its breath, staring. The fear inside me hadn't dissipated. I got into my truck, turned the key. The engine rumbled softly, pulling me back to reality, if only for a moment. I placed Matt's ash bag on the passenger seat, staring at it as if it might twitch again. Then I saw something on the floorboard. A rounded object, eye sockets gaping, clearly imprinted with deeply pressed fingerprints. Dr. Harkam's head, a parting gift. My throat clenched. I swallowed back the nausea, trying to control my breathing. I'd had a harsh childhood, so I knew how to push things down to the bottom of my mind. I grabbed an old jacket from the back seat and threw it over the rounded object. At least I wouldn't have to look at him in that gruesome state anymore. Then I did the only thing I could. I called the only person who could help. The only person who could pull me out of this destructive spiral. Joe, my friend from high school. We hadn't spoken in a long time, but he'd had a missed call from me this morning. There had to be some meaning to it. The truck rattled down the potholed road towards the highway. My hands gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles were white. He answered on the second ring. Allison, thank God. Tears welled in my eyes. Oh my God, Joe, it's been too long. I saw the news, knew you worked there. I had to call to see if you were okay. Joe, I have to tell you something. Something's following me. It started with a dog brought to my place. A devilish, evil thing that turned the hospital into a slaughterhouse in the blink of an eye. I paused. His voice immediately turned serious, the joviality gone like melting chocolate in the sun. Outside, the sunset sky was fiery red, the last streaks of sunlight fading. This isn't just bad luck, Allison. This is something else. Something ancient, evil, bad medicine. He clucked his tongue, the way he always did. The familiar sound stirred a pain I hadn't realized was cracking open in my chest. If only I'd called him sooner. Maybe things would have been different, or maybe not. "You remember where I live, right? Come to the reservation. I'll tell them to let you in." His voice was deep and steady, offering a shred of safety. He gave me directions to the Navajo reservation, about a 2-hour drive southwest. "I have a bag of ashes," I whispered, my fingers clenching the ash bag on the seat. "I just cremated his dog, the one he brought to the clinic before everything went downhill." Joe was silent for a moment, then said slowly, "That wasn't a dog. It's not a dog anymore." He didn't elaborate. A sharp, piercing pain shot through my calf, making me gasp. My leg trembled, feeling like someone was pressing a hot knife to my skin. I groaned softly. "Allison," Joe's voice was strained. The pain spread like wildfire from the bite, deep into my flesh. My heart throbbed, my hand clutched my pants, but I couldn't stop the tormenting fire. Then, from the dark floorboard, something stirred, a wheezing, wet sound like someone trying to articulate words with their mouth. I froze. Joe heard it too. I heard him take a sharp breath through the phone. A low hiss rose from beneath the jacket covering it. The sound of dry lips separating, a pained voice escaping from a mouth that shouldn't be able to speak anymore. That very voice made my heart stop, my chest hollow where my heart should have been pounding. Kytton. He was speaking through a mouth that wasn't his Dr. Harkam's mouth. I felt his pleasure descend upon me, heavy, suffocating, a twisted smile hidden in the darkness. Though I didn't see it, I felt it. A raspy sound, glazed with excitement, emanated from my dark floorboard, muffled by the jacket but clear enough to hear. This game is getting interesting. Part 3. I drove away from the pet crematorium, tires screeching on the asphalt. The road was deserted. I hadn't seen any other cars parked outside, so I didn't know how Kytton had gotten there. Had he walked? I hadn't heard an engine or any machinery running. The sun had set, filling me with an unexplainable apprehension. It was as if the entire red highway and the surrounding rocks conspired against me. Dr. Harkam's head still lay bundled under the jacket, but the ventriloquism act had temporarily ceased. I should have thrown it somewhere in the desert, but that felt wrong somehow. The man had been my colleague, I'd even grown fond of him. He had a temper, but so did I. We got along that way. My God, his wife and children, I had a hunch Joe would know what to do with the head lying there on the passenger side floorboard. Joe had tried to call back, but I hadn't answered. I feared Kytton was listening through Dr. Harkam's ears. I drove for almost an hour on a dusty road until I saw a rest stop. The gas gauge was almost empty. I didn't want to stop, but I had no choice. To reach the reservation, I turned off the highway and found an old, dilapidated gas station. A vegetable truck was parked near the diesel pumps. The string lights above cast a harsh glow, an oasis in the dark night. I pulled up to a pump, tossing some clothes over Dr. Harkam's head on the passenger seat. Beneath the fabric, I heard a faint, rasping breath. I ignored it, trying to focus on my surroundings. I slipped Matt's ash bag into my purse along with my gun. I walked past a big, bearded truck driver sitting in his cab, watching me step onto the sidewalk. I went into the store and grabbed a pile of beef jerky, a few energy drinks, and a steaming cup of coffee. Not touristy snacks, just enough to keep me going, alert, and awake until morning. At the counter, a skinny guy in his early 20s had his feet propped on the countertop. I heard a movie playing from his phone speakers, his mouth chewing popcorn loudly. The coffee smelled burnt with a metallic taste. The overhead lights flickered, as if unsure whether to stay on or off. $40 on pump 6, I said, pushing my items across the counter. He didn't respond, just clacked indifferently on the register. I handed him 2 20s. He tore his eyes from his phone long enough to drop the change into my hand. I didn't bother saying anything else, just walked out in silence. I crossed the illuminated area cast by the pump lights. Suddenly, I froze when I saw the truck. No one was in the driver's cab. A terrible premonition washed over me, clinging to me like an omen. I didn't approach it, didn't check. I knew what Kytton wanted. He was waiting for me to fall into his trap. I kept my eyes fixed on the truck's cabin, backing away slowly, my purchases and coffee in hand, my purse slung over my shoulder. I could hear my own ragged breathing in the night. Heavy, tense. I saw a red smear glinting behind the truck's windshield, like a faint, bloody brushstroke. I didn't take my eyes off the truck as I filled my tank. When I was done, I jumped into my truck, started the engine, and hit the lock button. The dry asterisk clack of the locks didn't dispel the wave of panic rising within me. As I circled the gas pump, following the front of the station, my headlights suddenly swept across the right side of the truck. The driver's door was ajar, thick streaks of blood dripping in large drops onto the black asphalt. I saw him. Kytton. He was clinging between the truck's wheels like a spider under a rock, his limbs long and spindly like wooden stakes stretched beneath his pale skin. His feet were folded and twisted, gripping the truck's chassis grotesquely, his elbows splayed in the wrong direction, everything seeming longer than normal. His neck was twisted like a coiling vine, his eyes reflecting the headlights, two blinding yellow spots. The bite on my leg suddenly itched, then burned. Thin wisps of smoke were rising from my purse. I quickly pulled out Matt's ash bag and placed it on the passenger seat. I heard faint crackling, like embers about to die out. The smell of burning fur and roasting flesh filled the cab. I recognized the chilling smile on Kytton's face, his mouth dripping with blood. The truck driver from earlier lay flattened beneath him, his chest cavity torn open like a crab shell. One of Kytton's sharp hands was plunged deep into the victim's chest, like someone rummaging in a purse for keys. Kytton's gaze was fixed, drilling into me as I swerved the steering wheel hard, kicking up a cloud of dust. He pulled his blood-soaked hand from the gory chest cavity and waved at me, a friendly gesture. I floored the accelerator, driving faster than was safe. It took a few minutes before I suddenly remembered the gas station attendant sitting alone inside, unaware of the monster tearing apart a body outside. I prayed he wouldn't be the next target. I actually thought about calling the police. But then again, I had a human head in my car, I'd be interrogated no matter what. And I certainly couldn't explain it. Dr. Harkham's head groaned in the corner of the truck as I sped down the highway. I sipped my coffee, watching the mile markers recede. The hum of the tires filled the silence. The head under the jacket still groaned softly. I called Joe, he answered after the second ring. "Allison," he said, "are you still breathing?" "Not dead yet," I replied. "I can't talk long and I can't say much, can't speak loudly." A pause. "It's with you, isn't it? Not him, but something else. I'm carrying something I shouldn't be. I think it can hear through it." "All right." Joe's voice was calm but a little rushed. "You can be vague. I understand. I'm about 2 hours away from you if all goes well. We're getting ready." He said he'd called an elder named Dispa. He dealt with ancient things. He said the shadow I described was an evil entity. The thing I shot might just have been a mask, not a real dog. "It wasn't a dog," I said, my voice trembling. Joe exhaled through his nose. I pictured him standing outside his truck, wind whipping his sleeves, his alligator skin boots kicking at the sagebrush. "We've built a fence by the Royal Arroyos Canyon. You'll see it before the road curves west. There's cedar wood for purification. Dispa is performing a ceremony. If that thing steps in, it will touch it. Maybe it will stop. I'll drive through and lure it in." He paused for a second. "Are you sure? Are you sure it's still chasing you?" "I'm not sure of anything, except that it hasn't let go of me yet." Joe's voice deepened. "If that doesn't work, we have a backup plan. If it gets past the hillside, lure it to the mobile home on top of the hill. My place. Go inside, let it follow you in. Then you slip out the bathroom window and latch the door from the outside. You can lock it from outside. You won't see anyone, but we'll be waiting. My cousins are there too, Dispa as well." He paused, then said, "All right, I'll be there soon." The silence between us was heavy. We both held back what we didn't want to say. "I don't know what that thing is, Joe," I finally said. "But it's not human, not anymore, I guess. I hate to drag you into this, Joe." He chuckled softly. "For you, I'd do anything. It's just a shame it took this terrible situation for us to reconnect." My heart ached. I should have found him sooner, but time had flown by indifferently. "Are the people there ready?" "No one's ever truly ready for something like this, but we've faced worse things than dogs in disguise." Joe, hot tears rolled down my cheeks. For the first time, they weren't bitter tears. "Just come, we'll handle it." I looked towards the horizon where the light had long since faded. The jacket in the corner of the car twitched slightly, then a wheezing breath echoed, as if listening intently. A faint click of teeth. "Almost there," I told him. "Keep the fire burning for me." I hung up. The road ahead stretched endlessly. I fought off sleep, drank caffeine, chewed jerky to stay awake. With every mile, I drew closer to the violent end awaiting me. Kytton saw me as some kind of muse, and he the creator. Perhaps because I had killed Matt, or for some deeper reason. An invisible thread bound us together. He had murdered my friends, my colleagues, decapitated Dr. Harkham, burned down the clinic, and even killed a truck driver just to send a message. This wasn't mere cruelty, this was personal vendetta. A few miles from the reservation, I saw flashing red and blue lights behind me, accompanied by a siren. If my mind were a spool of thread, it was now completely unraveling. This night felt like a slow-motion nightmare, a silk dress unfurling in the wind. I pulled over, my heart pounding erratically. My hands gripped the steering wheel tightly, my eyes fixed on the rearview mirror. The police officer approached from the right, walking cautiously along the shoulder. He signaled me to lower the passenger window, and I complied. "License and registration, please," he said in a firm voice. "Yes, just a moment, officer," I replied, glancing quickly at the pile of clothes, then taking a deep breath and looking up at the glove compartment. I pulled out some crumpled insurance papers, the registration, then my driver's license from my wallet and handed them to him. His face was cold, a hint of irritation. As he turned away, Dr. Harkham's head began to moan, a low, drawn-out sound like a howl. My heart seemed to stop, the atmosphere instantly shifting. The officer spun around, switched on his flashlight, and shone the beam inside the car. "What do you think you're doing?" he demanded, sweeping the light across the dashboard, the seats, then to the floor. Finally, the flashlight beam stopped on the lump under the clothes. He bent down, gloved hand reaching to grab it. "No, please don't." My voice choked, panic rising to my throat. If he found that head, Kytton wouldn't be my only problem. "Quiet, ma'am," he barked. With 2 fingers, he pushed aside the jacket and dirty jeans. He recoiled when he saw the head. Its eyes were gone, smeared with dried blood, the flesh raw, twitching faintly on the floor. The head let out a louder wail, its 2 dark eye sockets staring up at him. "Oh my God, what is this abomination?" His voice changed to anger. "Get out of the car, now." I reached for the door, clearly hearing him draw his gun from its holster, a crisp asterisk click asterisk. The flashlight was aimed directly into the cab, held firmly in his left hand, his right hand holding the dark gun, his gloved fingers gripping the handle tightly. "Do you have any other weapons?" "I have a pistol in my bag, nothing else. Please, officer, you have to listen to me." "Shut up," he shouted. "Hands behind your head, kneel down in front of the car." There were no other cars on the road, only the wind blowing with an eerie stillness. The air carried a bad omen, the faint smell of decay carried on the night wind. Shrubs stretched far beyond the barbed wire fence. The officer reached for his radio, then froze, listening. A chilling shriek echoed in the night, like a trapped coyote or a drowning wolf. The sound, filled with agony, was too close. The sagebrush and the air around us vibrated with something strange. I had stepped to the front of the car, following orders without thinking. Normally, I obeyed orders, I disliked trouble. The bushes rustled behind the officer, to the right, just beyond the shoulder. He swung his flashlight over, the beam hitting a figure. Long limbs, hunched body, neck twisted as if broken in many places. He looked like a giant crane fly, angular joints, moving in jerky motions, eyes glowing like white flares in the night. The officer's mouth hung open, gasping. He drew his gun, but his words were only half-formed. His hand trembled, his belt clinked, his face pale, sweat beading under his hat brim. His radio on his chest crackled. Time seemed to stand still. I wanted to scream, to move, to do something, but it all caught in my throat. I was paralyzed by fear of that horrific thing. Somewhere behind me, Dr. Harkham's head laughed again. Kytton was like an approaching storm, a tempest taking violent form. Standing before that whirlwind, I was rooted to the spot. He cleared the guardrail in a single leap, slamming into the officer with shocking force. The man was thrown, hitting his back against the passenger side door. The impact shook the entire car, tilting it to the left. That moment broke my paralysis. I leaped into the car, turned the key. The passenger window was still down. Through it, I saw the officer's body contort on the door, its weight bending and cracking the car's frame. Kytton's mouth was agape, his jaw pulled down to his neck, full of grotesque, jaundiced teeth. He crushed the victim's skull, tearing, chewing. The flashlight, the gun, dropped to the asphalt. Then I saw his eyes, long and narrow, swollen like rotten grapes, the vacant, hungry eyes of a predator. I slammed the accelerator, the truck roared. Something on the officer's belt scraped against the paint, creating a grating sound. I heard a thud behind the truck as they both fell to the asphalt. In the rearview mirror, I saw Kytton wrapping himself around the officer's corpse, his limbs twitching violently. His skin rippled as if internal organs writhed within. The patrol car's flashing lights cast red and blue across the scene. One of the officers' shoes rolled onto the road, its laces trailing, looking as if it was trying to escape without a body. Kytton paused, then dragged the victim's body away like a child pulling a blanket. Just as I managed to put some distance between us, he jerked his head, glancing at the back of my truck with terrifying speed, his eyes burning with fury. He had just realized I was escaping, and his rage erupted. I saw him throw the officer's body deep into the bushes, then he began to chase. I accelerated continuously, 60 miles an hour. The old truck rattled beneath me. 70. The engine whined. I smelled gasoline. Kytton was closing in. 80. The truck vibrated violently, the engine roaring. I swerved into a turn, almost hitting an oncoming car a few miles away. The wheels skidded on gravel, spraying stones. I gripped the steering wheel tightly. Kytton was just an arm's length away, moving at a frantic speed, long strides, elbows tucked close to his body. I saw the fire of fury in his eyes. He no longer intended to just chase. He wanted to kill, wanted my blood. And I knew if he caught me, he would never let go. Matt's ashes crackled on the seat like gunpowder, the head rattled on the floor. I felt like I was losing my mind. Amidst the smell of burnt ashes, the stench of death rose as Kytton drew closer. And the sound of the head laughing, I knew I wasn't imagining it. Everything was real. A distorted reality. The box where I stuffed all the unbelievable things was now overflowing. What would happen when the box broke? Would my mind break too? I sped through the arroyo gullies towards the toll booth at the edge of the foothills. The barrier was up. Was this where the fence was supposed to be? Could Kytton get past it? He was clinging to the side of the road, almost even with my truck's cabin. He wasn't looking ahead. His neck was twisted towards me, his entire body lunging with mechanical savagery, mouth agape, eyes bulging. Behind me, Dr. Harkam's head cackled. The engine roared as Kytton drew closer, the putrid smell thick in the air. I saw dried blood clinging to his twisted, bare body, like a crimson armor. The moment my truck passed the barrier, Kytton veered to the left. I watched him launch over the fence, falling clumsily, tumbling like an insect, limbs flailing in the air. The head stopped laughing, the ashes stopped crackling. I slammed on the brakes. Kytton writhed. I saw Joe's mobile home on the hill, half hidden by dust under the sweep of my headlights. I shone my lights on him. He twitched slower, then lay still. I slowly pressed the gas, my heart pounding. I floored it, intending to run him over, but at the last second he sprang up, lunging onto the roof of the truck, smashing the rear windshield with jagged, glistening shards. I backed up sharply. One wheel crushed his leg. For the first time, I saw pain in Kytton's eyes through the rearview mirror. I gritted my teeth, my jaw aching as he clung to the truck's frame, howling in agony. He clawed at his foot, trapped under my wheel. I shifted into drive. He was flung off, his leg twisted and broken like a dry branch. I climbed the hillside, watching him spring up, kneeling on all fours. His broken leg dangled, dragging on the ground, yet he still followed. But now his speed was reduced, he was injured. Bleeding meant he could still die at least, I hoped so. I circled to the top, the surroundings desolate, not a soul in sight. I hoped this was part of the plan. I prayed it was. I shifted into park, engaged the parking brake. Thumping footsteps echoed, growing closer. Kytton sprang onto the roof of the truck, the metal caving under his weight. Then he leaped forward, gliding over the hood, leaving a streak of blood on the windshield as he landed on the ground. He stood between me and the house, his reptilian eyes fixed on me. The mobile home door was wide open. I pulled my gun from my bag and aimed it at him. He tilted his head, making all my muscles tense. I squeezed the trigger. The bullet went wide, embedding itself in the mobile home's wall. Kytton lunged, I dropped my gun and darted around the front of the truck, running. He snarled, his broken leg thumping on the ground. He climbed onto the roof again. I ducked to avoid his swipe. The old wound in my leg throbbed, a fiery pain in my eyes, but I forced myself to run. A body, when desperate, will find a way to escape death. My mind, fueled by adrenaline, became a weapon. But he was also fueled by adrenaline, his nerves like short-circuited wires. His mouth gaped like a withered flower, his tongue darting in and out, as if sniffing something. Perhaps he smelled Joe and the others nearby. He leaped. I dove through the mobile home door, a sharp nail raking my back. I squeezed past a floral sofa, knocked over pots and pans in the cramped kitchen, and ran towards the bathroom. Kytton burst in, roaring, "Bitch, I'll rip out your throat." His voice was like rusty iron dragged on concrete. echoing through the narrow hallway. "Tear out your guts and chew them clean." The mobile home swayed under his weight, hinges creaking. I slammed the bathroom door, then scrambled for the open window. I kicked off the bath mat and toothpaste tube, struggling to squeeze through. A searing pain shot across my back, the wound in my calf throbbing. Kytton was close. I heard his hot breath, the smell of hatred emanating from him. The wooden door behind me splintered as I lunged. My teeth hit the dirt, a blinding white flash searing through my brain, blood gushing warm and thick into my mouth. Something yanked me very fast. The sound of the window slamming, someone grabbed me, pulling me out of the mobile home, around to the front of the truck. Kytton's screams roared from inside the house, chaotic, savage. He growled like a trapped animal. He knew something was wrong but couldn't resist his bloodlust. Now he was trapped. I looked up at the sky above the canyon, where lightning flashed, purple streaks zigzagging. The air vibrated with the sounds of insects and night owls. The desert seemed to awaken, sensing what was about to happen. A strange man approached, wearing a bandolier of sage bundles, leather pouches smelling of cedar and ground corn. He walked to the mobile home, gently took Matt's ash bag and Dr. Harkam's head from my car seat, then placed both through the window, inside the house. Behind him, another man knelt on the ground next to an old truck axle, dressed in a long, embroidered tunic with turquoise beads and white patterns. He began to sing in a language I didn't understand, deep and heavy, echoing